Hello, all you amazing beings out there. We are Mindfeelz, and today we actually have one of our first special guest conversations.
Yay!
So this is Ramon Carrasco. He is an artist in the community. He lives in Austin, Texas currently, and he is a supporter of the LGBTQ community.
That is correct. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very honored to be your first guest. And it is Pride Month, so happy Pride Month.
Yeah.
And a lot of historic things happen in this month and are happening today. Like, if we take it back to 1969, the Stonewall Riots, which were riots against police brutality towards the LGBTQ community. So all that broke out. A major activist in this movement was Marsha P. Johnson, which was a black trans woman. So I feel like a lot of people are on the Black Lives Matter movement, which is great. But when we're talking to religious people, that means that if you agree with Black Lives Matter, then you agree with Black Trans Lives Matter and Black Gay Lives Matter. So if you're already there, you can easily make the bounce to be a LGBT ally. What do you think?
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, we agree, we already are. so you want to call attention to, this is linked up with this movement. It's another civil rights movement. They kind of pair together because, maybe there's certain schools of thought who don't recognize the LGBTQ community and, but they recognize the Black community, and we want to bring all that together for more support of those who need their civil rights.
So I want to say something quickly. So to keep in mind, we are supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement and the civil rights movement. This is kind of a side conversation to tap into more of those movements that are actually going on that is about bringing awareness as the whole. Mm-hmm. So especially during these times, if we can get through these times strong and work to kind of come together, then we might be making progress in all these other places. So I think this is that transition to say, this is another movement that needs awareness, that needs attention, that needs people to speak out and communicate, and us to get on that level playing ground.
And how crazy that it's literally in the same month.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
There's definitely some correlation there, and I feel like once you talk Black Lives Matter, but let's focus in on everything that's part of that group and that whole aspect of it. Because I think there's still a lot of prejudice when it comes to LGBT, and I mean, we're still constantly fighting for our rights and things like that. So I think it's like a community that has always been like looked bad upon. So let's tear off the layers.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, remove those kind of the separation, I think, and look at it as this is all human rights. This is all a part of human rights. Right. And it all kind of goes under that same umbrella. We need to be aware. And what happens if the LGBTQ community and the Black community come together, and what even more, of a voice we have if we do that, and those of us who support those communities come together and support them in tandem and take down any of that separation that we might have, and just educate ourselves on how much, there's a mutual kind of need for human rights and recognition of that.
And if you can support this movement, then this is just an easy add-on, like, it's human rights.
It's just like upgrading your package. Like, just upgrade your awareness package to now also support
your awareness package.
Yeah.
And maybe bringing a little bit of light to the situation is important right now, because it does feel like there's I'm scared, I'm scared to talk, I'm confused about what I should say, I'm like, who to support, what, is it okay to like cry out right now, is it okay to like also say, hey, look at me, I matter, like, I think it really all goes, it really all goes, keep in mind that there are people that have had really intense struggles, and this triggers them for, and it feels like, if I've gone through this, then, like, what about, you've gone through this, what about me over here? And I've actually had all these troubles, and it feels like that. And we talk about how we're not really always supposed to pull it away from the person at the time, so we look for the moment to have that conversation. But I do think it's like, there is a cry out right now for just everybody being seen, you know, and it seems like I see it on Facebook, I see it on Instagram, I see it even in the politicians, like in the government, in the cops even, like it feels like people want to feel like they matter. So I think that Black Lives Matter probably, it's intense to put out there because it's scary for people because they're like, well, what about me? Does it mean because I say this person matters that I don't matter? And it's not true. But remember that it might feel like a trigger to a lot of people. Certainly, you know? So it's like, remember that like we're always evolving. So maybe even this civil rights movement is evolving to a greater movement and a human rights movement because it's not us against each other. It's us against the governments and the laws and the politics and right?
Us against racism.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Or just inhumane treatment.
Yeah.
You said something very triggering for me. You said, I see in social media, I see. How important is it now for artists to be conscious of what's going on? Because how often when you're on social media, you're skipping through things that people are talking and you skip, but then you see images that are powerful. I think now more than ever, artists have a very important task at hand to really do activism with art.
And I had tapped in on that in a different conversation, but we do have a responsibility. And when you get to that level of influence, and people have influence right now, you do, it is a responsibility. I think even right now before I'm saying what I'm saying, because it's like, oh, do I want that out there, you know? And it affects us. So I mean, there's obviously an ego mentality there. It's like, oh, well, I want to be able to live up to what I said, or at least be able to apologize later if I didn't feel that way, or I didn't understand correctly. But more so than that, we know what we're doing, you know, most of the time. At least the artists, podcasts, viewers, social media influencers, the public that's speaking to the public, right? We got to be better than the way that politicians speak to us for sure. Because I mean, I know that we all look at them and they're like, well, that's not what I would say, or and, you know, like, what are they thinking when they say the things that they're saying, or when they tweet the things they're tweeting? Like, are they thinking like? But you know, some days I feel like we think more than that, you know, and it's like maybe if we become more conscious and aware of that information, like we'll just get smarter, I think, if anything. And that's important. We need to be smart and responsible.
And outspoken. Silence is betrayal.
Yeah, and if you do make a mistake, just own up to it.
Yeah, because we don't always get our thoughts straight.
No.
Sometimes we're not good at
or you don't know if the way you say something affects someone, and taking ownership of that might happen. And I think when people use the platform and they say something and somebody's upset, somebody's triggered, that for them is real. We talked about last week, struggles are relative, so we have to accept the reality of other people's struggles. And even if maybe our intention wasn't to create that feeling in them, take a recognition that might happen, and we need to handle it appropriately and validate that person's response and apologize or learn something new. I mean, that's kind of, we were just talking about after we did our Black Lives Matter segment, like, okay, if we said anything that was triggering for anyone who listens, we want them to feel safe enough to educate us further so that we don't do that more. And changing that mentality that we have.
That's why I like activism through art, because it's a methodical thinking image that you've created and given it thoughts and process where you don't have to step back and say, oh, well, this is what I meant, because you've actually thought about it. So you've created it thinking what your message was going to be.
It's with intention and it has a message. Right. There's a message right there that can be seen. What kind of art do you do specifically? What's your medium?
I do a lot of acrylics, I do a lot of portraits. I think I just bounce off what people want, because I do a lot of commissions, but me now thinking that I need to be like more political in my art, but I'm thinking I'm creating nothing that speaks to any great cause. And I think that's something more that I need to start experiencing and dabbling into. Because I think that's how it started back in the Mexican Revolution in 1910. Jose Guadalupe Posada was a cartoonist, and he started exposing the government through his political cartoons.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I actually thought of something while you were talking. So a little bit more about Ramon. I think he's an interesting person because you're a smorgasbord of human. How do you consider your sexual orientation? What are you?
I don't know, like I feel like it depends on my mood, but I guess I like non-binary. Like I don't feel like I'm masculine. I don't identify with male. I don't identify with just female. I think I'm a little slinky. It goes back and forth. So I would say binary non-conforming.
Okay, and how long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army 4 years and then 3 in the National Guard.
Okay, so that's also an interesting point.
And
and
then
my gosh,
what are you? I was terrified when they sworn you in and like if you're gay, don't ask, don't tell. God, my acting skills.
You were lying?
My acting skills better be like Oscar worthy here.
You're like.
It was just so funny. I guess they weren't very good because every time I would tell someone, they're like, "Ramon, we already knew." I'm like, "Man, I thought I had you fooled," but I didn't.
How does that sidebar, that policy work? The don't ask, don't tell thing. Is that still?
Well, it was. You weren't able to be in the military if you were gay.
Yeah. If
So
you're openly.
I think it was Clinton who switched it to, okay, you can be, but you're not allowed to ask you and you're not allowed to say. And then when Obama came, is when it was like, you can freely be.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And that's not very far.
How recent was, like that, what a recent change.
Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
But I never felt discriminated because of my sexuality in the Army.
But you're very...
I think our legislation was behind our way of thinking already. And I think it is till this moment. Our legislation is behind our way of thinking and our ideals today.
Yeah. But you're a very compassionate person. And you receive other people's opinions well. It doesn't seem like you get triggered too much or upset if somebody believes a certain thing or thinks a certain way.
No, because I already made up in my mind what I am.
Okay.
So your opinion of me, that's what you gotta do.
You don't latch on to it.
Yeah,
so for people that are out there that may struggle with that, like, what do you think? Were you always like that? What can you maybe speak on that would help people?
I wasn't always
like
that.
So
I always felt like I was a people pleaser just because I wanted acceptance, just because I guess I didn't feel accepted in my own home and that type of thing. But then it came to the point where like I'm gonna do me because everybody's gonna have an opinion regardless of what you do or you don't do. So instead of I'm just gonna be me.
So was it just like a snapping moment?
Was
I'm
it
just gonna be. Did you have to do things to secure that?
I think it was a progression.
Okay.
And it's also, I feel like the people you hang around rub off on you. So then I started hanging out with people who were very secure in their sexuality and in their ways, and then I think I learned from them. Like they were empowered by who they were, and they didn't care about what others had to say because they were on a mission, their own mission, and everything was just like noise around you.
That's interesting. That makes sense. Because even in attachment style, if you have an insecure attachment style, in psychology, the healthiest way and the easiest way to develop one is to have a relationship with someone who has a secure attachment style, because they teach you and you naturally learn and you kind of reform your way. So if you feel kind of like uncomfortable in yourself or insecure or afraid, find people who have it and kind of let them influence you.
I feel that I have a lot of friends who I think they become my friends because they want my
Now you can pass it on though. That's nice. And once you get it, you can pay it forward.
Yeah.
I think we had a small conversation earlier where we talked about, I think it's good to, sometimes you can look at people's friends groups and you can kind of see like who they are by also their friends, but you can also see sometimes the stuff that they don't show that they are. Because it's like, if you have a friend who has a friend who's like very, very different than them and you don't understand that, I always just kind of presume that also they must be also on the down low a little bit like that, you know? Right? So like, Ramon and I have been friends for quite some time, and I always appreciated his ability to be so comfortable in his skin, which I think is interesting because you probably didn't always feel that way, but that exuded off of you in a way that so much that it made me more comfortable in my skin when I was around you. So when there's the two of us, maybe when I left you, I didn't feel that as much, but watching you grow into that has helped me feel confident and inspired me to then be more comfortable in my skin. And I think that if you would have looked at me maybe before, you might not have known that, but then looking at you, you might be like, well, why is that person friends with that person? But it's like, I guess I had that yearning to like be more like that. Okay, so then where are culturally, like I guess, what is your cultural origin?
Well, both of my parents are from Mexico.
And you were born where?
In the U.S.
In the U.S. Okay. I just think that's interesting, Mesh, and I think it's great to have you here and to be able to talk about everything that's going on, because when we're separating people, you know, it's like people don't fit into boxes anymore.
No. So you have a lot of, you know, you identify with a lot of the human rights movements,
Right.
you know, like the immigration, you know, things that we're dealing with, the civil rights things, the gay and trans rights things that are going on. Like, I think realizing like how important all these things are to so many people because of many different reasons. We're a melting pot. So we're probably seeing a lot of other people around us who are processing way more than what we're realizing.
And then everyone has their own vantage point.
Mm-hmm. And there's different experiences and things, and I think it's important to meet people and talk to people. And if you grew up like in a very limited exposure to other cultures and things like that, I mean, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I moved across the country just because I wanted to. So I like getting dipped into other cultures and meeting other people.
You have a little Tennessee-ness to you.
What is that?
How old were you when you moved away from there?
I was born in Texas, lived there till I was like 3 or 4. Then I lived in Chattanooga for 3 years, then Memphis until I was between the ages of 8 and 23.
Oh, okay.
So I lived there like 16 years.
I feel that vibe.
So the majority of my life was there. Yeah, that's why I like 3-6 Mafia. It's
I haven't heard
little
of
known
them in
fact.
such a long time.
But it's important to expose, you know, ourselves to other cultures and other ways of living and other sexualities and genders and races and we're very privileged that we have access.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we were talking about how we've evolved. Now we're seeing that access. Like we're seeing friendships form between people who have all kinds of different backgrounds, and I think the more we do that, the smarter we become.
It wasn't that long ago that people would not hang out with people because they were gay or didn't want them around. Isn't that true?
I've had so many friends that say, Ramon, I never liked gays until I met you. And even have someone say,
there you go. Oh, people still talk like that.
I even have people that say, I don't like gays, I just like you.
Oh God.
Well,
That's a very strong statement considering it's 2020.
Yeah.
but it really wasn't that long ago that it was really not okay.
Yeah.
We're making progress.
So that was like
we
I think
still have a long
that
way to go.
the community's made quick progress. I think a lot of times the older generations get a lot of the flack because it's them who hold on to it.
Started with the rioting in Stonewall.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Then that's
Come
full
back.
circle.
60s.
Yeah, full circle.
A lot of things happened in the 60s and 70s. We think about civil rights, we think about free love movement, the hippie movement, and
Does
gay rights movement.
Does this almost feel a little?
It feels like we're doing it again.
There, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like our generation
But it's
is like a renewed kind of free love generation.
I just
in a
heard
way.
that there's more psychedelic use now
That's
than
how
there
I
was
feel.
in the 60s.
I just was very slow coming. Like,
Yeah.
geez, like, why are we still dealing with this?
I
Like,
know.
Because
It's
it's not been
frustrating.
fixed. It hasn't been healed. We moved a little bit, and I think that's the way revolutions work. It's like, I have this idea about a revolution. We go in cycles.
All
we
those
know we go in
turns,
cycles.
if you
But
think about how we do a little turn each time as we revolve around
like the little
the sun,
yeah.
how many turns we have to keep taking till we get,
Yeah, that's right.
And it is.
Or the little, what are those little clock wheels? Like this one has to turn a lot just to turn this one a little
Yeah,
bit.
Okay,
yeah, that is.
No, I think it's progression. It's just we have to go around the whole circle, and then when we go around the whole circle, then we make that little bit of progression, and
then we get a
keep
flag in
going.
the process.
then we take a detour.
Off base. Yeah, it's.
I just think it's one that people are willing to like talk about and have these uncomfortable conversations, like these courageous conversations.
Yeah,
So
they are courageous. I like that.
People, it's better just to ignore than to address.
and be prepared to change your mind. I think we get
ego,
in there, and we think our mindset is, the best one, and we're not open to changing it. I mean,
but it also doesn't mean
growth awfully hard.
You don't have to change your mindset and change your opinion to accept another's mindset and accept another's opinion.
That's correct.
I think that's really important in a diverse
world. You don't have
world.
to turn it into somebody else's, but opening yours up so that you can be understanding that other people have different ones than you.
That's important.
And you don't need to force
That's
yours,
okay.
and those things are okay. And how do we learn to cooperate, not just coexist, but cooperate with our differences, because we're going to have differences.
Yeah, I think it always is mirrored, and I always look at the just one-on-one relationships, because we do struggle with that.
The children now.
I feel like humanity is in first grade.
Yeah.
That may very well be true.
60 years ago, we were kindergartners, now in first grade.
Yeah.
But we're still fighting with our classes. We still can't share a crayon. We still have to tell a tale. I'm still going to pinch you when the teacher's not
We're
looking.
not there yet.
Like, humanity is still in first grade, and I want us to graduate.
It's going to be a long road for all grown-ups around here.
First grade, we have second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. Oh my God, we still have a long time.
And those of us with kids have a responsibility,
yes,
to
because
teach
all of this is like
our
learned
kids.
behavior.
This is a big deal, and I think that's another point where we can heal and really pull attention to all these human rights movements is how do we share this information with our children?
How do you talk about it with your children?
They
right now?
notice differences amongst people, and when Finn has asked me about his friends' different skin colors, and we just remark how it's just like someone have different color eyes or different color hair, or some people are tall, some people are bigger, some people are smaller. It's just the outside, really not very important at all. And so he really doesn't put any weight on that, and I think just putting your kids in those environments, and just we have friends who are a lesbian couple, and they were not sure what to say to Finley about who this person is, or if they're allowed to show affection. And I'm like,
they get it.
I want him to see healthy love in all forms. So if you are healthy and you are treating each other with love and respect and kindness, show that. That's my view. And there are people who don't agree, and I don't really care, because those aren't my people. And I want my son to grow up with an elevated way of thinking.
And also show your kids that color has no gender. I would get so frustrated
when
I was a teacher.
I know.
And the little girl's
he's so
oh my
hung
God,
up on that.
why is he using pink? I'm like, because colors are for everyone. Color has no gender.
And toys, boy toys and girl toys, and I'm not fully supported amongst every adult that he comes in contact with for that kind of mindset to be developed of what's boy and girl. And your kids will naturally gravitate towards the things that they like, and that's okay, but we sometimes make him eat off a pink plate, because it's not, if you like it better than another color, it doesn't really matter. Boy, girl, colors don't exist.
Yeah.
And, Mattel did that. The boy and girl toys.
When we did the episode on, I can't remember which episode it was, but we talked about masculine and feminine not having...
The gender role being forced of...
So I shared that with him today, and we were talking on that a little bit, is it should be fluid all the way through, and each person then should have a spectrum of masculine and feminine that they go through, and it's not also separate. And I think starting to learn that, that's kind of new information, I think, too.
We all have the same hormones in different levels, and we just learn how to balance who we are and not identify so heavily with a hormone. You know what I mean? I'm not too masculine or too feminine if I have a certain characteristic one day. You just learn how to balance who you are and your strengths. And we put that...
I don't do associations.
We put that thing on it, yes, we have different characteristics that naturally occur in us, but there's plenty of people who don't fit into those molds in all areas. I'm great with my hands. I fix toilets. I do electrical wiring, plumbing, all those kinds of things. People would not guess that, because I also like to wear lipstick. But we are multidimensional. We are multidimensional human beings. And if we look at ourselves that way, we see so much potential, rather than putting ourselves in this little...
I like that.
But I feel that's what people want to do.
I'm a girl, I'm a boy, I have to be this way.
Yeah.
But that's maybe because they don't want responsibility or something. I don't know what the reason, but I think it's we get stuck in these places, so that's the reason. We don't have to really know the reason why people do it, but we're stuck. We're stuck still, it's we gotta move past that, because we're You haven't moved past first grade, I guess.
Yeah, we're still in first grade.
Oh yeah. Some of us are at the top of the class.
Some of us is true.
Back to kindergarten because we don't have the basics yet.
Oh my god, that's such a good analogy.
Oh man.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us for this episode? Put you on the spot there.
Register to vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that.
Get involved. Know what your senators are doing. And get involved in voting, what all these people represent. Because a lot of things, our hands are tied because of the people in office.
Yeah.
So get
Local
involved.
government and small government. And
Yes, and
that's
it
something
starts
I've
from
been
your-
thinking
yeah.
like a sense of I haven't been aware, haven't
Me
been
too.
involved because
I can be
politics
better.
really
And
frustrate
I'm
me.
guilty of that.
Yeah,
Me
politics
too.
frustrate
And they're-
me. They upset me, and I don't like the choices we
Yeah.
have, but we have to
Yeah.
start on those community levels.
Yeah.
That I've been feeling that too. Like
Everywhere though, right?
we
should
have
be on
to
the
be aware
PTA
of what is
members
going
and-
on.
Yeah.
And then also like educate yourself,
City
go to
council,
school, become a
everything.
cop, become a lawyer, become become these individuals, and we won't have these. Like we've got to move in the direction that I think sometimes we just don't want to put in all the work, and it's like I said,
We
I'm
have to
guilty
be
of that too.
active game players.
Yeah,
in
and
this
then
world.
we change. We are the ones, and our children are the ones, and then who knows what that world's gonna look like? It
Otherwise,
might
we're
be
gonna
wild.
be stuck on first grade.
We gotta leave it really good because Finley,
Yeah.
he's gonna
He's
come out
sweet.
a great human, and he's gonna need some friends.
Yeah.
So we need other good humans around.
So vote. And also, if you see an injustice, don't be scared to speak up and to defend the other person.
Yeah.
And to say, excuse me, like,
Yeah.
call people out.
If you know something's wrong and it's
Yeah.
happening in front of you,
Yeah.
I know it feels like a scary time, but we can't be afraid to use,
We need
to
to-
speak for the voice of
We need
justice.
to have each other's backs.
Mhm.
Yeah, we should. We do, and we should more.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Ramon Carrasco.
Thank you for having me.
I will place some of his information to go check out his YouTube channel, his Instagram, his artwork, and things like that in the ending segment. And I'm Sheena Dressel,
And I'm Lauren Garrison.
and we are Mindfeelz.